Hi, welcome to This Week in Ames. I'm Susan Guiasta. On today's show, we'll check in with the Ames Finance Department. My guest today is Finance Director Duane Pitcher. Duane, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Susan. Great to be here.
Well, this is a busy time for the Finance Department. You have a lot going on. It is the beginning of the budget.
It is. Just a couple weeks ago, we held our town budget meeting, which was the first kind of official public input that we have for the budget that's coming up, and that's for the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1st of 2015.
So it seems like kind of early to be working on a budget that doesn't start for almost a year.
It does seem a little early, but we do like to get all the input, and we need departments to also get input and put all that information together. And we certify the budget to collect taxes by March 15th of every year, and we like to do it a little prior to that in case we need to make some changes. So just shortly after the 1st of March, we'll be certifying the budget. So we need to be well along.
And by starting the process so early, obviously you give the public a lot of opportunity to get involved and to look through the numbers and make some comments.
We do. There's several opportunities. The next one will be coming up is the CIP, which will be in mid-January. That's a capital improvement plan, and there's two sessions, one where we present it to the council, and at the same time then it becomes available at the internet for all the public to see it. We also have paper copies available. And then the following week, we'll actually have a public hearing on the capital improvement plan. So January is a busy time then. The end of that month, we present the entire budget to the City Council. That'd be on January 30th. Then the next week in February, we'll have a series of public hearings where we go through the entire budget with the Council, and that's an opportunity for the public to give input.
So recently, a department like Parks and Recreation had a public input for their CIP specifically because they do a lot of activities that the public probably is interested in. And you mentioned the town budget meeting as well. I mean, people don't have to wait till January to comment. Obviously, they could write in at any point if they had something of interest.
Absolutely. They can always write to the mayor and council. Park and Rec's a good example. They can write to the Park and Rec director, the Park and Rec commission. Specifics on streets, you would go to the Public Works Department. So there's opportunities obviously through the entire year to give input on what you want more of or less of and where you'd like changes in our services.
So the budget process obviously is very complex. It has multiple steps. How large is the budget for the City of Ames?
Total dollars? It can vary quite a bit, but in the $200 million range. And a lot of it's capital improvements that are in there, but that's going to drive it a lot. We have some big projects coming up with the water plant and also with the electric plant, so that can vary. But we plan that out obviously over 5 years and try to level things out.
So I've heard you talk about this quite a few times. You give a very nice sort of synopsis on how the money comes in and how the money comes out. Just quickly, where does the city get most of its funding?
Well, about half the funding comes as fees for services, and the bulk of that are the fees we pay for the utilities as we use them. So water, electric, as we talked, that's our largest one. Wastewater, storm sewer, you don't really use it, but you pay a fee to make sure that the stormwater gets taken away in an orderly fashion. And those are the big ones. There's also user fees for some of our Park and Rec activities and things like building permits, but that's the biggest chunk at about 50%. Then property taxes, which are, I think, pretty evident for everybody that owns property, or if you rent, you're indirectly paying property taxes. That's another pretty big chunk.
So explain for those who may not realize, the property tax bill that comes in your mail or that you pay through your escrow is not just the city that is taxing you.
That's correct. It covers several different areas, the biggest of which is the Ames School District. Second biggest would be the city, then there's the county, the community college, and then there's some very small pieces after that. But the city of Ames makes up about a third of that bill.
Okay, so the city, we get funded through about a third of your property tax. Okay, fees for service, about a third of the property tax bill. What are some other sources?
A local option sales tax, that is split a couple different ways. 60% of that goes to reduce your property taxes, and the other 40% is for an area called community betterment, and that's arts, human services, and various capital improvements. Some of the more obvious ones would be like improvements to parks. Those come from that area.
So let's talk about local option sales tax. So the state has a 5% sales tax on every taxable item that you purchase. The city puts 1 penny on top of that.
That's correct.
And then the school
and then
district.
there's the school local option tax. That's statewide now, but if you're in Story County, it's a 7% tax. 1% goes to the city. Actually, it goes divided up with all the communities in the county. But that's a pretty good source of revenue, and one that can, go up and down with the economy. Another fairly large source for us are grants. One of the biggest areas is for SIRIDE. I think you're obviously pretty familiar with the way that's funded. Part of it's property taxes. The biggest part of it, as far as local funding, is from the student fees, and they have the ridership that's included within their fees. So that's the biggest source, other than the federal grants that go along with that.
Okay, and then now that's the revenue source. Let's go the other way. How do the expenses play out?
Well, it pretty much matches up. The 50% or so that I mentioned that were user fees, that funds those activities. So electric, water, stormwater, sewer, that sort of thing is all funded through those fees. Inspections, that's funded through fees. Then there's other things that don't really lend themselves to fees, like police and fire, the parks. We don't charge admission to parks, they're free. If you were the person that had the fire, or the 150 or so that have a fire, and you have to divide up the cost of the fire service, that would be pretty expensive. So that's protection for all of us, and that's paid for through property taxes. But that's just a couple examples, but it more or less matches where the money comes from.
So I know that certain departments, or maybe I should call them programs, within the City of Ames are called enterprise programs. Can you explain a little bit how that works?
Sure. An enterprise can be run on its own, more or less. So, for example, the water plant runs off its own revenues, has its own expenses, and has their own balance sheet, own financial statements. And that's a pure enterprise. There's some other activities that we treat like an enterprise. A couple would be like the Homewood Golf Course. So their revenue covers all their operating costs, though we will put in some other funding for capital improvements. Ice Arena is another good example. It operates on its own, but property taxes pay for the debt service to pay for the facility, along with some contributions by Iowa State.
So you mentioned a lot of the different departments and divisions that are falling under the umbrella of the City of Ames budget. I was asked recently about Mary Greeley. They are not tax supported by the city?
They are not tax supported at all. They're technically part of the city by the way that the hospital was established, but they operate fully independent of the City of Ames.
So when you pay into your property taxes, you're not actually funding any hospital services?
You are not.
So again, you mentioned the process. We start in October with the town budget meeting. It comes back again in 2015 where we start CIP and some budget hearings. Let's talk a little bit about that process once we get into the new year.
Well, it starts out at mid-January, like I mentioned, with a public hearing on the capital improvement plan. Well, first it's presented to council, then a public hearing. And then on the 30th of January, that's the date where I'll go over the entire budget, and that's on a Friday afternoon with the council. We don't get
that's a
big
long
public
meeting.
turnout. That is a very long meeting, but it's the only time where we big picture go over the entire budget with the council, so they can get the full perspective before they have individual departments presenting each of their pieces, and that happens the following week. So it's a very busy week, both for the council, finance department, and our departments that are in there presenting their own budgets every night for a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then a lot of cases the following Tuesday when they show up for the budget wrap-up.
So these meetings, again, are public meetings. Anybody can attend. But if it didn't work in your schedule and you were still interested, most of these documents are online.
They are online. We've set as a goal, which we've met, that as soon as these documents go out to the council, they're available for the public. So, the minute, more or less, that they are sent to the council, we also post them out on our website, and there's various different ways to get those. They're pretty prominently displayed on the finance web page. I think they generally have a link with the new documents on the front page. So they're out there, they're PDF searchable, should be pretty easy to find your way around, and if you can't and there's certain things you're looking for, you can certainly give us a call and we'll help you out.
I know I'm always interested each year in the manager's budget transmittal document. I mean, pretty much, the city manager writes a sort of a summary and identifies the highlights of the budget.
Yeah, you know, if you look at nothing else, that's a good place to start. It does really hit the highlights of, you know, what's new, what's changed, what are some of the things creating some of the bigger impact on the budget. And he doesn't cover just the current year. We also look forward a little bit because we are doing a longer-term planning, especially on capital improvements, and talk about, you know, for example, there may be a rate increase in water this year, but there won't be one next year, but there might be one for sewer. So we try to layer those things out and give the council and the public a good look ahead at what to expect in the future years.
So any sneak previews from you? Anything that is sticking out about this year's budget or concerns that you have?
Well, I've always got a lot of concerns about the budget. We have some big projects going on, one of which we just received bids for, and they were pretty favorable, and that's for the water plant. We have the big conversion for electric, and that's coming up here shortly.
These are multi-million-dollar projects, very large.
These are very big projects that are going to renew some facilities that should last for a lot of years. So it's a pretty big impact initially, but I think the most important thing is that we implement these correctly and get them funded, and we'll certainly get that done. Otherwise, this was the first year of the commercial property tax reform, and that seems to be going pretty well. We appear to have had a lot of valuation growth in Ames. Retail sales have seemed to come back a little bit, so there's been some positives this year also. I think we'll have a good budget year.
Great. Well, Duane, thank you for stopping by. We know this is getting right
Susan.
into your busy time, and we look forward to having you come by again.
All right, great, thanks.
If you want more information about budget documents, make sure to check out our website at cityofames.org. You can find those under the Finance Department. Also remember, mark your calendar. Trick-or-treating in Ames will be held on Friday, October 31st. The recommended hours are 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And also remember, Yard Waste Free Days begin October 25th and continue into November and end this year on Saturday, December 6th. You can find more information on Yard Waste Free Days at our website. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for watching, and tune in next week for This Week in Ames.